Our group today is going to be presenting on the topic of sexual education. My name is Hailey Graham.
My name is Brooke Sevy.
My name's Adam Clegg.
And I'm Courtney Reeves.
All right, so we're going to start out by asking you all about what your sex education was like where you grew up. Was it taught in high school? Was it taught in middle school, or both? And what range of topics did it cover? And as we go through the slides today, think about how effective you feel your own sex education was. All right, we're going to start with some history on sex education. This started clear back around World War II when there were a lot of troops coming down with STIs. This did lead to about 40% of the schools in America adopting some form of a sex education. By the 1930s, teachers were being trained on how to teach this subject, and in 1960, different birth control options were being created, specifically the birth control pill. It was becoming more widely accessible to people, and it started what was known as a sex revolution. In 1981, the Reagan administration introduced the Adolescent Family Life Act, and this funded an abstinence-focused sex education. However, there was a lot of research at the time showing that this was an ineffective method of sex ed, and that teens were still having sex. By 2010, the Obama administration cut the funding for that act in half, and they used the remaining funds to start a more comprehensive sex education program for schools. Sex education now is a little different from what it was in the 1900s. Although sex education is still very scattered across America, and there are a lot of students who don't have access with it to begin with. Sex ed has been divvied up by each individual state deciding what they're going to be teaching, and each state has then pushed it off onto each school district. And this has created a very large variety in the type of education that students across the country are receiving. The map on the right-hand side of the screen shows just the variety that I was speaking about before. It ranges from sex education being mandatory and there is a set curriculum to there is no curriculum and no access at all. And there are still a lot of states that are still using an abstinence focus in their curriculum. However, the Me Too movement that has uprisen in the last few years has caused a resurgence in how we talk about sex ed, and it has encouraged the teaching about consent. Now, sex ed has changed a lot over the years. It now covers a wide range of topics. This can include sexual orientation, STIs, overall healthy relationships, different birth control options, and even just the process of going through puberty at a young age. More and more parents are more and more approving of it being taught in middle schools and high schools, and for the education system to take hold of this curriculum rather than it being taught in each individual home, as they're seeing lots of variety in how children are learning. Sex ed is also more focused now on promoting an overall healthy development and lifestyle, rather than shaming or even masking the original problem that the abstinence approach focused on. So while sex education has come a long way in the last 100 years or so, we still have a long way to go before it is where it should be.
The next portion of our presentation, talking about the pros of teaching sex education. The first pro that we will talk about is prevention. This quote here says, "Comprehensive sex education is an essential part of HIV prevention. It is proved to be more effective in preventing sexually transmitted infection than education that focuses solely on teaching abstinence until marriage." Like it said there, teaching the prevention in sexual education is very important to help students and teens know the risks that they are taking when they participate in sexual activity. If we leave them without this knowledge, then they will continue to participate in these actions and not know what type of risk they are looking towards, and what could possibly be going on throughout their body where they might not even know. The next part of the prevention that is taught in sex education is educating students on the prevention of unintended pregnancies. One of the ways that this is taught in sex education is by teaching students the importance and the different types of birth control. In some courses, there are even birth control handouts as known as condoms, where students are able to take those home and be able to use them in their sexual activity to prevent these types of infections. Like a lot of people say, students are going to continue to participate in these sexual activities, whether they are educated or not. So we want to show that by doing our part, by educating them, will help to prevent these diseases as well as unintended pregnancies. The next part that we want to talk about is the empowerment against sexual violence. Teaching sex ed creates an empowerment against sexual violence. First of all, when students are aware of sexual activity and what this means, what this entails, and when they feel comfortable talking around this subject, then they are more likely to disclose sexual abuse. When sex becomes a topic that no one wants to talk about and it's awkward to be brought up, it is easy for people to think that they are in the wrong or something is wrong with them if they encounter a situation of abuse. Next, being aware of the opposite gender helps reduce the risk of gender-based violence and bullying. Teaching about the opposite gender and what is going on in their body helps to create equality and respect at a young age. One of the most important concepts in sex education is teaching the concept of consent. Teaching about consent teaches what this word means and how to react to it. It teaches both parties how to say no and how to respond and understand when someone is saying no. Consent, as it says here, there are no blurred lines in consent. This is something that needs to be very clear, taught to our students. This is something that is even taught at a young age by teaching young kids that if their family member comes up to them and wants to give them a hug or a kiss on the cheek, and they don't feel comfortable with that even at a young age, then they are able to say no. By teaching this, and when children are able to understand this at a young age, then they are able to take responsibility if this ever does occur in later times in their life. Lastly, some of the pros of the importance of sex education is that it teaches teens to take responsibility of their own health. A lot of teens are not taught this subject in their own homes. And if they're not taught there, then and they're not allowed to be taught in school, then they will not be able to learn about any of these topics anywhere. When they learn about this at school, it helps them to be responsible of their own health and not have to depend on a parent or a family for teaching them about this. They are more likely to accept their physical and emotional changes. When they don't understand the changes that are occurring in their body and occurring in the people around them in their bodies, then it is hard to accept yourself and to accept others. By bringing up this topic at a young age, you're able to be more accepting to all of those around you. The last one that I want to talk about is that this overall helps students to be more informed about making decisions about sex and their sexual lives.
All right. The next section that we'll want to talk about is the cons of sex education. Our presentation today is about the importance of sex education and why we need it in our schools. However, there are a lot of people that are opposed to sex education. If people weren't opposed, then we'd have sex education in all of our schools, and it wouldn't be an issue that we need to talk about. So why are people so opposed to sex education? There are many people that believe that sex education should only be taught by the parents of the children, because they are able to see more appropriately when that child is ready to get that information. A lot of schools are teaching it in middle school, sometimes in elementary school, and some parents are not okay with that and think that they should be taught in either high school or in college about sex education. Another opposition against sex education is that it's not individualized. So students are not getting to choose when they're ready. Rather, the material is just given to them at possibly inappropriate times. It may be appropriate for some students, but for others, it may not be the right time. And the last opposition is sex is pretty taboo to talk about. It can be super embarrassing, especially if you're talking in a co-ed class. And this can also lead students to not want to even participate in it because they know that it's going to be this big, awkward thing. So by giving more awareness to sex education and the importance of it and the benefits of it, more kids will be able to want to participate in sex education. There are some community concerns with sex education as well. There's two different quotes here I'd like to read to you. The first is from CatholicParents.org, and they say, "Public school has no right to judge the quality of information on sexuality that parents provide their children. Some do a good job, some do a poor job. The school should stay out of the bedroom." So each school is going to teach sex education in a different way. Even though it might be kind of the same topics, it may be taught in different ways, maybe different examples, so kids may not understand the exact same things as other kids do. That's one concern from the community. The other one here is from KQED.org, and they say, "Some people, particularly parents and religious groups, take issue with comprehensive sex ed because they believe it goes against their cultural or religious values and think that it can have a corrupting influence on kids. They say that providing teens with the kind of information, you are endorsing and encouraging sex and risk-taking. Some opponents also argue that this type of information should be left up to the parents to teach their kids about and shouldn't be taught in schools." So a lot of the Christian religion teaches to not have sex until you're married. And a lot of people in the community are saying by teaching kids how to have sex correctly or to say no to consent, everything like that, that it goes against their cultural or religious values. That's one take that can be a con to sex education. The last portion here that I want to talk about with the cons is a survey from schooleducationgateway.eu. And they did a big survey about sex education. And the one that I picked here was, they asked the question, does the school or staff have a clear process for helping individual pupils who have concerns about sexual and reproductive health? So essentially, when you're teaching sex education and a child has a question about it, basically, is there a clear process to answering that question? And this is the graph on the right-hand side. This is the research that they gathered from that question. They said 8% was yes, there is a clear process to support individuals with concerns about sexual and reproductive health. 42% said that there is no official process. Teachers address such concerns on a case-by-case basis. And 51% said that there is no process for addressing individual pupils with concerns about sexual and reproductive health. Asking questions is a really big part of learning and understanding how things work, and that should not be any different with sex education. So this is definitely a concern if teachers are not able to provide the information to a student who may have questions and wants to learn more about their body or anatomy or everything like that.
So why is there a need for sexual education? Though there are contradicting opinions on teaching sex ed in schools, everyone has the right to know about their bodies, the different parts, how they function and how the body responds to different like natural chemical reactions and hormone balances. This type of information is critical to understanding how to keep our body healthy. Don't we want our children to understand how to keep their body healthy too? We teach children at a young age that carrots help keep your eyes healthy, and oranges have vitamin C, which helps your body heal. Because we teach children at a young age how to take care of their body and how to keep it healthy, we should also be teaching our children about sexual education, as this has just as much as an impact on their overall health as eating healthy. Sexual reproduction is a natural part of life, so it is critical that children and youth understand their bodies in that way as well, not just about the food pyramid. Sexual education teaches about sexually transmitted diseases as well as sexual abuse. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to give a 9-year-old a full sex ed lecture, but from a young age, we should teach about sexual education, even if it just starts with consent and what that word means and how to respond. Each year, as children and youth become older, more mature and aware, new topics can be introduced into their curriculum. These topics can age in maturity along with the students to ensure that they are fully understanding the material. This helps youth be more open with their individual questions and concerns. By the time that the students are in high school, they will more fully understand their bodies as well as be more aware about the effect of sexually transmitted diseases can have on them and their friends. Not every child is going to be taught about sexual education at home. Sexual education in schools also varies from state to state as well as school district to school district. Sex ed should be standardized throughout the country, so each student gets the opportunity to fully understand their bodies. If sex education is standardized across the country, it will allow all students to receive the same level of education. When everyone has access to the same level of education, they are able to make more informed decisions, which can lead to actions that not only can affect themselves, but others around them. We can help develop this by sending out a standardized surveys to each parent in regards to sexual education and what they feel should be taught. This allows everyone to input what areas they feel are most important regarding sexual education. Are there things you wish you had learned when you were younger? Is there something that you believe would benefit your own children? As the time comes to educate our future generation of our country, we invite you to reflect on your own sexual education experience and how sexual education classes can improve in the future. Thank you.